What are some other reasons historically that we may have fasted?
Famine or drought.
Right. Like in the Tani, we hear all about if there's a famine or a drought. Exactly, we're praying for rain. There's another one that's actually connected to Tani Esther. Salvation. We're fasting on Tani Esther before the salvation even happens, though. In a time of war, it used to actually be a thing to fast. I think with Tani Esther it's sort of a misconception that we fast because Esther fasted, but the timing doesn't really work out. So the correct reason there, I believe, is that we're actually fasting because of time of war. So there are all these different types of reasons. But I want to actually, hi, good morning. It's okay, you can take the source sheet. So, yeah, go ahead.
What about the passing of the tzaddik from Moshe Rabbeinu?
Okay, interesting. Right, maybe not as widespread, but you could add to that taking on some sort of individual fast. Great. Maybe a fast on the first or the, like on Yom Sheni or Hamishi also. Occasionally people do, maybe to take on this extra level of trying to be close to Hashem. So that's all sort of an introduction to fasting in general. But if we look at the Nevi'im talk a lot about fasting and similar rituals. What other types of rituals might you group with fasting? So you might do that if the fast is a morning type of fast. But just even thinking more broadly, we have rituals like fasting. We have rituals, I'm thinking of like korbanot, okay, where we do something that's essentially a ritual, something that's about us coming close to God, but it's not at all ben adam l'chaveiro, and it's done in this sort of communal context.
Times Hebrew.
Okay, interesting. Right. So it does get very specific. That's really the case. So the Nevi'im talk a little bit about fasting. They talk more about the korbanot. Almost every single Navi has something to say about the korbanot and about how they weren't giving korbanot in a nice way. So we'll look at those two together because the Nevi'im don't talk as much about fast days and because it's a similar sort of approach to korbanot. And we'll see that actually the Nevi'im didn't like the fasting of Bnei Israel, and this is Hashem's message through the Nevi'im, and they didn't like the way that Bnei Israel were giving the korbanot. And we see this over and over and over again, and we have to ask, but so why are we fasting? Does Hashem really want our fasts? And I titled this, "Are our fasts and our prayers pleasing to Hashem?" Because essentially today, we're not giving korbanot, but our prayers are sort of in that place. So if these are things that are ben adam l'makom, does God really want them? We know He doesn't need them, but does He? What use does He really have for them? Does He really want us to even be giving them and to be fasting and giving korbanot?
Pleasing scent.
And that's nice. That's interesting. So there could be circumstances where Hashem really wants that beautiful scent, but how exactly is that scent given, and what are sort of the circumstances is what we'll look at. So let's take a look first at Yeshayahu Nunchet, which is also the Yom Kippur Haftarah. So we'll be seeing it again, so always good to see these things in advance. So Yeshayahu says, Kra begaron al tachshov. So this is Hashem sort of giving the message to Yeshayahu. Cry out with your throat, al tachshov, without any restraint. Kashofar harein kolech. Very resonant kind of symbol on Yom Kippur when we're reading this, that Yeshayahu should call out and raise his voice like a shofar to tell the nation Pishan that they've sinned. Ulebeit Yaakov chatotam. The oti yom yidrishun. Hashem says, yes, you're seeking me out. It's wonderful. You're trying to be close to me. V'da'at terachai yachpatzun. You want to know my ways. Kigoy asher tzedakah asa mishpat elokav lo azav. Yishaluni mishpat tzedek kirvat elokim yachpatzun. You're trying to be close to me. You're trying to do mishpat and tzedek and all these wonderful things. Lama samnu v'lo ra'ita. But this is what you're saying. This is sort of in quotes now. You're saying to me, God, why aren't you accepting my beautiful fast? I fasted and you didn't really see. I oppressed my soul and you didn't know. And then Hashem answers, because on that fast day, you're going about your business. V'chol atzvechem timboshu, and you're oppressing your laborers. So it has nothing to do with the fast day itself. Like, yes, you deprived yourself of food, but you didn't act like a nice person on that day. You oppressed your laborers. Very specific examples here. Hein l'riva matzat tatsumu. You were fasting, but you were fighting. There was contention and strife. V'chol atzvechem. Ula hakod be'agrov resha, and you strike with a wicked fist. Lo tatsumu kayom lahashmiya b'marom kolchem. You're not fasting so that you could connect to Hashem and have your voice heard on high. Hakazeh yihiyeh tzom avcharehu. You think this is the type of fast that I want? Yom anot adam nafsho. A day for you, just nefesh here isn't your soul, but it's your body. You think it's just about depriving your body of food? And remember, we're reading this on Yom Kippur. That is what we're doing. We're told it's a Torah level commandment to fast on Yom Kippur. It's not a bad thing in and of itself, but it's about the intentions that the people have. And Yeshayahu knows what the intentions of the people are. And Hashem, through Yeshayahu, is giving this message of, you're not fasting and having the right intentions. You're not fasting to help your voice get higher so that Hashem can hear. I don't want that type of fast. Halakof ke'agmon will show that you're bowing your head. You're doing all these rituals. You're, bowing at Aleinu, and you put the paper towel on the floor. Like, that's great, but what are you thinking? What is going through your mind? V'tzak ba'efer yatzia, and you're wearing the right clothing. In this case, you're wearing sackcloth. So maybe in our case that would be like you have on all the yontif gear. Maybe you're wearing all white. But it's not just about setting yourself up for the rituals, and we'll see soon, but that's also important. Of course that's important, and we have to sort of balance that, but Hashem says here, like, he's giving this message of, I don't care about that at all, because your Bein Adam L'Chavero is so off. So the message is sort of to the extreme. Your fast doesn't want it at all, and your sackcloth, it's disgusting to me, because you're a bad person. You're doing things in the wrong way. Halozet som avcharehu and pasuk vav. So this is what I want, and he goes on and says pateh harbutzot resha hatera gudot motach. Kind of confusing language, but in these two psukim he's saying, bring, shatter those wicked, habits, and open up your homes. In Zion, halo paros la'ra'ev lachmecha. Extend, food to the needy. The aniyim merudim tavi bayit, and people who are sort of wretched, on the sidelines. Bring them into your homes. Kitir aron v'chisito. You see somebody naked, give them clothing. Umi b'sarcha lo titaleim, and don't ignore the people who are your people. I actually think of all the amazing chesed that communities down south were doing for Houston when I read that pasuk. So it's powerful to think like how the words of the Navi kind of can apply to us today. Those images of bringing people into your home and clothing people. Those, at this time, I said, wow, there are some amazing examples today of how we have done those things. So we certainly have a downplaying of the fast to the extent that Hashem isn't even saying, yeah, you should fast, but you should also have the right intentions. He's just like, what are you even thinking? And we have one more source where we see this maybe in not such an angry way, but this is a source from Zechariah. Some Jews returned to Eretz Yisrael after the 70-year exile, and it's the fourth year to Daryavesh, we're told, and all the people say, we have to go ask the Nevi'im what we should do, because here we are in Yerushalayim. It must be that we don't have to fast when anymore. When are we not going to need to fast? Tisha B'Av. And they also mention they actually also mention Som Gedalia, because it says the months in the pasuk we see in Gimel, Leimor ala Kahanim asher lebeit Hashem tzvakot v'ala Nevi'im. They're giving this message to somebody who could get an answer from God. Ha'efkeh b'chodesh ha'chamishi. Do we need to cry anymore in the fifth month? Hinazer kasher asiti zeh kama shanim. Like, do we need to? It's interesting. The word there is like a nazir. Do we need to kind of remove ourselves? I guess you could translate it like we've done all these years, all the 70 years since the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. Because we're back. This is great. We can rebuild the Beit HaMikdash. Why do we need to fast anymore? And God answers kind of like a parent who gives a rhetorical question and doesn't really make the answer so clear, but you know what he's getting at. So he says, Amor al kol am haaretz, v'yala kohanim lemor. Ki tzamtim v'sapod b'chamishi u'vashvi'i. When you fasted on the 5th and the 7th month, so Tisha B'Av and Tzom Gedalia, v'zeh shivim shana, all those 70 years, hatzom tzamtuni ani, did you fast for me? V'chi tochlu v'chi tishtu, halo atem ha'ochlim v'atem ha'shoftim. And when you're eating, it goes into your bodies. It doesn't, I don't care, God says. Halo et hadvarim asher kara Hashem b'yad ha'nevi'im ha'rishonim. This is what God shared with those nevi'im. So he doesn't really explain himself here, but he says, yeah, you should fast. You think you were doing that for me? So what do you think the message is there? Because he doesn't really make it explicit. You can think about the time period that was going on then. 70 years later, some Jews had returned. Not everybody.
That it's for them, and they still need to work on whatever it is.
Right. And there's always something to work on, and you're not there yet. It's not like everybody has returned to Yerushalayim and the Beit HaMikdash is rebuilt. So those are our two sources about fasting. And now we'll look a little bit at sacrifices. We'll have to sort of skim through some of them because of time. But there are a lot of really interesting examples about sacrifices where similarly Hashem says, like, really? You think I want that? You think that's for me? And then we'll have to ask again at the end, but doesn't Hashem want that? Like, didn't he command us to do that? So in Shmuel, we have this great story where the Navi tells Shmuel has to wipe out all of Amalek and all of the animals and men, women, children, everybody. And what does Shaul do? Does he complete it?
He saves the king.
He saves the king, and what else? And some of the animals to sacrifice to God, because the people said, wouldn't that be so nice if we give a korban to Hashem? Because we'll save the best sheep, we'll save the best animals and give those as a korban. And Shmuel and Shaul meet, and Shaul says to him, Hakimoti et devar Hashem, hey Shmuel, how are you? I fulfilled God's word. And Shmuel says to him, you know this pun? He says, meh kol hatzon. It's one of like the great biblical puns. So meh, instead of ma, but meh can mean that too. So and Shaul still doesn't get the message. And finally, the quote I have for you here, Vayomer Shmuel says, Hachifetz la Hashem ba'olot isvachim. You think Hashem wants your korbanot? Ki shmoa b'kol Hashem, like he wants you to listen to him, because he said to wipe out those animals, and you thought it would be better to save it for a korban. Hine, and this is beautiful parallelism. I love this part of the pasuk. He says, Hine shmoa mizevach tov. Listening is better than giving a sacrifice. And then the second part of the phrase kind of deepens that thought. So it's parallelism because we have these two parts of each of these phrases which kind of parallel each other, but the second part deepens the idea, and then we have lehakshiv, which is a little bit stronger than shmoa, michelav elim lahakshiv, which is like this, a deeper kind of listening, is better than the fats of rams, which is just like very specific, the fats of rams as opposed to sacrifices. But Shmuel's getting kind of poetic to say to Shaul, God doesn't want your fats of rams, you know, I'm sure it's not going to be nice and juicy on the Mizbeach, but he doesn't want that. He wanted you to listen and follow through. And this is like the start of Shaul really losing the kingship, because we see in that next pasuk, Ki chatat kesemeri va'aven utrafim heftsar. So not listening to God is like, or not listening to like the authority is like avodah zarah, he's saying, like trafim. Ya'an ma'aste devar Hashem b'im ascha mimelech. So since you rejected Hashem, you're going to be rejected from being king. Very powerful message about authority. I don't know if we could share that with high schoolers. What do you think? Okay, so here we have Shmuel teaching Shaul, it's not all about your sacrifice. It's about the connection that you're going to make with Hashem, listening to Hashem. So this is the one time we see it in more of a narrative context. And I'll just mention that the Ralbag says in the next source, he explains, well, Hashem doesn't want your zbachim as much as listening to him, because you give a korban when you do a chatat, when you do a chait. So isn't it better to just not do the sin than to do the sin and then have to give the korban? I was in Rinat for Yom Tov, and Rabbi Wiener there spoke about how, what does it really mean that when we say a Baal Tshuva can't stand in the place of a tzaddik? It can't really be that somebody who does a sin and then recuperates from it and does tshuva is better than somebody who never had that inclination to do a sin. So I thought that was sort of an interesting idea. Like, we're not praising people for, oh, great, you had a Yetzer Hara and you overcame it. But he explained, one of his explanations was, well, if there's a situation that's beyond your control and you overcome it, that can be really powerful. Maybe that's one way to understand that message of Chazal, that a Baal Tshuva is better than a tzaddik. But the Ralbag is saying here, we're not praising you for giving a korban, like using the korban sort of like a Band-Aid. You did something wrong, you put the Band-Aid on, and you could just then go do it again, because you could always get another Band-Aid. It's sort of like a toddler who has that repeating cycle of messing up the train set, like my son was doing this morning, and then saying, I'm sorry, and then doing it again. So, but that's normal for a toddler developmentally, but not for Bnei Israel. Any questions so far? Any comments? Feel free. Okay, so then we have, like I said, Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, many Nevi'im who talk about sacrifices, but not in a narrative context as much, so we can kind of get out of that what Bnei Israel were doing at the time, but we have here more just straight up Nevuot. So Yeshayahu, right off the bat, in Perek Aleph, right at the beginning of the Sefer, he's talking about Korbanot, and in Pasuk Yud Aleph, Lama li rot zibchechem yomar Hashem, savati olot elim, techelef miriim. Why do I have so many korbanot from you? I'm like full from it. V'dam parim ukvasim ba'atudim lo chafaksim. He's saying, I don't want your korbanot. You're trampling my courtyard. He says in the next pasuk, when you come, don't bring any more of these. And he says, he says in pasuk Tet Zayin, in Yud Zayin, he says more what okay, you have to go to the next page. So I just want to skim because we're short on time, but in Yud Zayin he says, what I'm really looking for is the theme that we've been seeing of Bein Adam L'Chaveiro, Limdu Heitev Dirshu Mishpat, Ashru Chamotz, Shivtu Yatom, Rivu Almana. Take care of the people in your midst, take care of the orphan, the widow, do Mishpat, Tzedek. That's really what you should be focusing on. So instead of like this balance of like, yeah, do your Bein Adam L'Makom, it's great as long as you're also doing Bein Adam L'Chaveiro, God's really pushing aside the Bein Adam L'Makom. I don't even want that. It's disgusting to me because your Bein Adam L'Chaveiro is not in a good place. We see that as well. I'll skip quickly to 9 and 10 because then we'll go back to 8 to Yirmiyahu. It's in the order here of the Nevi'im, but we'll go a little out of order. So Micha, interestingly, this is also very poetic in Zion. Hayurtzeh Hashem ba'alfei elim. You think Hashem wants 1,000 rams? The rivavot nachalei shemen. Your tens of thousands of rivers of oil. He doesn't want that. And in Chet, there's a famous phrase here, and you'll see the context. So, Higid lecha adam matov uma Hashem doresh. I'm going to boil this down for you, Micha says. And many of the Nevi'im would actually do this. They'd say, I'm going to boil it down. And first they boiled it down to 10, and then to 9, 8. There's a Gemara that actually goes through how there's this progression. We get to Micha. He boils down what Hashem wants from you into 3 basic things. Then I forget which Navi it was who boiled it down even into one thing, like just be a good person. And the way Micha says it is, Ki imasot mishpat, do justice, ve'avat chesed, and kindness, ve'hatznei alechatim elokacha, and walk modestly with Hashem. So he's not talking about dress codes, but this is really that only source that we have of tzniut, but here it means walk humbly with Hashem, like just be a good person and do the right thing. And also towards Hashem, it's not like he's saying here just do the right thing towards other people, but focus on the right intentions. And we'll see that come up in some of our later sources, so remember what Micha says. And finally, in Malachi, I just wanted to bring that source because he kind of varies this theme of Hashem doesn't want your korbanot by saying, you're not even bringing nice korbanot. Like, at least bring, like Shmuel wanted to do, like Shaul wanted to do in Sefer Shmuel. He said, I'll save the best korbanot for Hashem. But here, in the time of Malachi, they're bringing disgusting korbanot. Lechem mego'al, like disgusting bread. Like, you're bringing me the moldy bread. Ve'amartem b'meh ya'alnucha be'emrechem shulchan Hashem nivzehu. And you're like, what did we do wrong? How have we defiled you? And you're bringing iver and piseach, v'choleh, all these animals that are not eligible for korbanot. They're tainted, they're wounded, they're sick, or they're blind or lame. So Hashem doesn't want these korbanot that are disgusting. So that's sort of a variation on the theme that we've seen. So back to Yirmiyahu. I actually remember learning these psukim from Yirmiyahu as a student here. Mrs. Kahan, Rivka Kahan was my teacher, and I remember how she explained this, and I loved it, so I'll pass it on to you. So we'll just focus on the Pasuk Daled, where Yirmiyahu says, you're looking at the Beit HaMikdash, and Al tiftechu lachem al divrei hasheker. Don't listen to the voices of sheker, of falsity that are out there, that are saying, what are they saying? See that Beit HaMikdash up on the mountain? Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hashem, Hema. Why do we have that Heichal, house of Hashem, 3 times? So either you can understand it like they're saying, oh look, Heichal Hashem, oh look, the Heichal is over there. Anytime you want to just put on that Band-Aid and go to the Heichal and give a korban, no problem, Heichal Hashem, sort of in like a mocking way of how they're treating the Heichal as this immediate fix. Another way to understand it is that only the first 2 Heichal Hashems are quoting Bnei Yisrael. You say Heichal Hashem is Heichal Hashem. All the meaning of Heichal Hashem is like in the building. The Heichal Hashem equals Heichal Hashem because anything that you want to get forgiven for, you can do in the Heichal itself. All the meaning is tied up like in the building. And then the Navi adds those last 4 words, Heichal Hashem, the last 3 words. Heichal Hashem equals Hema. It's not about the building per se, but Heichal Hashem is about you and the intentions and thoughts and meaning that you're bringing to your mitzvot in your relationship with Hashem. It's not about the building as a physical place. And finally, in Pasuk Kaf Bet, Yirmiyahu gives us these weird psukim. He says, Ki lo dibarti et avotechem v'lo tzivitim. I didn't even command your forefathers, v'yom hotziotam me'eretz Mitzrayim al divrei olav hazevach. I didn't even ever command that about korbanot. So what's our obvious question? Korban Pesach, right? And Sefer Vayikra.
He wasn't alive then.
Well, but it's Hashem's words.
Oh.
Yeah. So I is Hashem.
Okay.
But we have the Korban Pesach, but we also have other types of korbanot. In the beginning of Sefer Vayikra. All I said was, just listen to my voice. The same theme that we also saw with Shmuel and Shaul. I just want to be your God. I want you to listen to me. And etc. I just want you to listen to me. I never even asked you for those korbanot. Sounds like a little bit of revisionist history. You did actually command us about the korbanot. So how might we solve this problem? What might Hashem, Yirmiyahu mean?
Like without the kavanah, without the proper, you're doing all the physical acts of the kavanah, and you're doing this side and that side, but you're missing the whole kavanah. The whole purpose of kavanah is karov, so that goes to Hashem. Maybe that's what Hashem.
Okay, so in line with what we've seen in these other Nevi'im, maybe you can say, okay, he doesn't really mean it so literally. He didn't mean so literally that I didn't command you. He just meant I didn't command you in this way. Any other ideas?
Because the people wanted it, because that's what the other cultures were doing, and so God accommodated them.
Okay, so good. That's like the Rambam, which we'll see, says, it's not like I ever really wanted it. I did command it, but I didn't really want it. Okay, great. So we'll look at 2. So the Maharik Kara says, I didn't command you, al divrei olav hazevach, l'kov'am chova, to make it an obligation. She'ein katuv sham korban Hashem. It doesn't say this is a korban for Hashem in Sefer Vayikra where we learn. It says, Adam ki yakriv mikem korban. When a person gives a korban, I'm going to teach you the laws, what you should do if a person wants to give a korban, but I don't really need this from you. And he gives another example, im ola korbano, if a person gives his korban. So that's sort of like he's kind of honing in and giving a very specific answer to this problem that we have in Yirmiyahu on the Pasuk, not really looking super broadly. The Rambam, as a philosopher in Moreh Nevuchim, is looking more broadly when he answers the question of what does that mean Hashem didn't really want the korbanot? So now let's look at source 11 where we have the Rambam. So we're jumping now. We saw many Nevi'im, and now we're going to jump to two medieval philosophers who, both of them, both the Rambam and the Kuzari, Rabbi Yehuda Levi, look at this whole issue in a broader way that might answer some of the questions that we started off with. What does it really mean that God doesn't, that the Nevi'im downplay the fast? Does he really want our fast and our prayers and back then our korbanot? So does somebody actually want to read the Rambam, the Moreh Nevuchim in the English? Any volunteers? Do I have to call in? Thanks, Maddie. That's being recorded.
Because of this principle which I explained to you, the prophets in their books are frequently found to rebuke their fellow men for being overzealous and exerting themselves too much in bringing sacrifices. The prophets thus distinctly declared that the object of the sacrifices is not very essential, and that God does not require them. Samuel therefore said, "Hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord?" Isaiah exclaimed, "To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices unto me, saith the Lord?" Jeremiah declared, "For I spake not unto your fathers, nor commanded them in the day that I brought them out of the land of Egypt concerning burnt offerings or sacrifices. But this thing commanded I them, saying, Obey my voice, and I will be your God, and ye shall be my people."
So we saw all those psukim, and the last one was the one that we had a problem with, and then he continues to answer.
This passage has been found difficult in the opinion of all those whose words I read or heard. They ask, how can Jeremiah say that God did not command us about burnt offerings and sacrifice, seeing so many precepts refer to sacrifice? The sense of the passage agrees with what I explained to you. Jeremiah says, in the name of God, the primary object of the precepts is this: know me and serve no other being. I will be your God, and you shall be my people. But the commandment that sacrifices shall be brought and that the temple shall be visited has for its object the success of that principle among you, and for its sake I have transferred these modes of worship to my name. Idolatry shall thereby be utterly destroyed and Jewish faith firmly established. You, however, have ignored this object and taken hold of that which is only the means of obtaining it. You have doubted my existence. You have denied the Lord and said he is not. You served idols, burnt incense unto Baal, and walked after other gods whom you know not. And come and stand before me in this house. I.e., you do not go beyond attending the temple of the Lord and offering sacrifices, but this is not the chief object.
Okay, thank you. So according to the Rambam, does Hashem really want the sacrifices? Sort of like they were let in through the back door. And then when the Jewish people went and didn't do it in the right way because they saw it as the means, they saw it as the object in and of itself and not just the means to an end, Hashem said, that's the meaning of those psukim, the Rambam's saying. That's how we can understand, I never even commanded you. I didn't really want it ideally, and now when you're going and using it as the object in the relationship with Hashem, I really don't want it at all. So again, the Rambam is looking a bit more broadly at this issue of sacrifices, and he uses some of the psukim that we saw sort of as a jumping off point. The Sefer Kuzari doesn't start, so the way that the Sefer is organized is the Kezar, the Kuzari, is asking questions about Judaism to the rabbi, who's like Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, answering these questions about Judaism. And he says, I've read your books, and I certainly, and rightly so, I think I read in your books as follows, okay, continuing whatever they were talking about, and I read these phrases. What does the Lord thy God require of thee but to fear the Lord thy God? In Devarim. And the pasuk that we saw in Micha. What does Hashem require of thee except for just these three things? That was the pasuk that we saw. So what is that all about, the Kuzari is saying? All Hashem wants is these few things, but you're telling me that there's 613 mitzvot and there's so much more to follow. So the Kuzari answers by saying there are different types of laws. We have the chukim hasichliim that involve the seichel, rational laws. Ones that, these are the rational laws being the basis and the preamble of the divine law, preceding it in character and time, and being indispensable in the administration of every human society. Even a gang of robbers must have a kind of justice among them. if their confederacy is to last. When Israel's disloyalty had come to such a pass that they disregarded rational and social principles, which is probably what was going on in the times of many of those Nevi'im, which are absolutely necessary for a society as are the natural functions of eating, drinking, exercise, rest, sleeping, and waking for the individual. You need these sikhli types of laws, these obvious types of laws. But held fast to the sacrificial worship. They ignored those mitzvot chukim ha-sichliim, but they held on to the sacrificial worship and other divine laws. He was satisfied with even less. God was satisfied with 1, 2, 3, just listen to me, walk humbly with Hashem, treat others justly. Hashem was satisfied with fewer mitzvot. He said, I don't even need your rituals. I don't even need you to be giving me korbanot, because then you're going to go and forget about your fellow Jews, because you're going to go to that Heichal Hashem and think that it's just the Heichal Hashem and that it's not in you, and you're going to forget to treat somebody kindly and to open up your house to guests and to people who need it and write a check for tzedakah. You're going to forget about those things if you're doing the sacrificial worship. Rav Hirsch famously said, we should just close all the shuls for 100 years, because it's not about the shuls. People go to shul and then they think that they could leave and, I don't know, talk about what the rabbi said at their Shabbos table in a way. You think that you're getting your points in shul, and it can negatively affect the way that you treat other people. So that's the Kuzari's answer. He was satisfied with even less. It was told to them, happily you might observe these laws which rule the smallest and meanest communities, such as refer to justice, good actions, and recognition of God's bounty. For the divine law cannot be complete till the social and rational laws are perfected. He's saying those rational laws, the sichliim, the chukim ha-sichliim, like how to treat your neighbor right, those came first, and then the divine law builds on that. I don't think that we need to read through all of this, but he's saying that's essentially his idea, that we need to first focus on those ben adam l'chavero mitzvot, and perhaps then we can understand. Remember, he's actually explaining not why we have a downplaying of the significance of fasting and korbanot in the Nevi'im, but he comes at this from those psukim that say, why is it that Hashem just wants us to do these 1, 2, 3 things? But he's certainly referring to this idea of korbanot and rituals, just coming at it from a different perspective. But he's certainly saying Hashem really doesn't even want those. Those are secondary. They come second. So I just want to end with this brayta that I discovered recently that's really nice, and it goes as follows, and I think it's very relevant for this time of year. Titania ze Eli v'anvehu. Where does it come from? Ze Eli v'anvehu? From Az Yashir. So we're glorifying Hashem. This is my God, ve'anvehu. I will glorify him, would be the literal translation. So the first opinion in the Braita says, hitzna'eh lefanav b'mitzvot. Hitzna'eh, like na'eh, beautiful. Make things beautiful before him by doing mitzvot. What kind of mitzvot can we do beautifully? There's some mitzvot that we especially do in a way of hidur mitzvah. What types of mitzvot? Exactly, the lulav, the sukkah. Aseh lefanav sukkah. So you're going to decorate your sukkah with the most beautiful, shimmering, plasticky things. The lulav, and you're going to buy the most beautiful, lulav that comes in and etra that come in the A category, or maybe you're going to even spend $1,000, like the guy in Ushpizin, all that money he got in that movie. You spend it all on that lulav. Actually, the movie Ushpizin, the theme really fits with what we're talking about here. And the shofar, it's going to be beautiful. Tzitzit, na'eh, you're going to have the blue strings. Sefer Torah, na'eh, the most beautiful Sefer Torah. So many of these actually apply to this time period, not the Sefer Torah more than others, but this time of year we're focusing on a lot of rituals. We have the sukkah to build, we have the shofar, we have to hear it 100 times. There's a lot of rituals that are bein adam l'makom, being in shul, building the sukkah, taking the lulav and etrog, the Breita continues with a description of how to have a nice Sefer Torah. The katuv bo lishmo b'dio na'eh b'kolmos na'eh. You have like a nice ink, and the pen that you're using, the reed is nice. Belavlar omein, with a skilled penman. V'korko b'shurin na'in, and you wrap it with beautiful silks. So we should be zocher to write a beautiful Sefer Torah in that way. Abba Shaul Omer, but Abba Shaul says, and I think he's sort of disagreeing, but you could argue that he's just giving a different opinion. He says, Ve'anvehu, he gives a bit more drastic opinion. Maybe na'eh means beautiful, but he says, Anvehu means have domeh lo, be similar to him, to God. How does he get that drash? Rashi says, have domeh lo, v'lashon anvehu, so anvehu is like ani v'hu, me and him. E'esat smo kemoto lidavik b'drachav, you should make yourself like him and try to follow in his path. So it's, again, a bit more drashic. Anvehu, what does it mean? This is my God, and I will glorify him. No, not by having the most beautiful sukkah in town and the biggest one. Well, actually, maybe you should have the biggest one so that you could welcome in the most people. You should be like Hashem. Just like he's gracious and compassionate. Af ata hayeh chanun v'rachum. You too should be gracious and compassionate and be thinking about those inner characteristics in the Bein Adam l'chaveiro. Perhaps more importantly than the Bein Adam l'makom. You could read it as a balance and not so much a disagreement. Abba Shaul disagreeing with the former. Certainly at this time of year, we're focusing on everything. That it's important to check in with ourselves and say, am I spending the right amount of time on those rituals, which maybe this time of year are the shofar and the sukkah and the meals that we're cooking, or all the fancy desserts and all these different things that enhance the Yom Tov. But am I also focusing on inviting people into my home and making sure that I heard 100 kolo, but did the neighbor down the block who can't leave his or her house, did that person hear 100 or 30 kolo, and fulfill the mitzvah? So I think that this Breita is asking us to sort of just check in that with ourselves, that this month should be really about everything. I don't think that we're in a situation like in the time of the Nevi'im where we need to let go of the Bein Adam l'makom. That's not necessarily the message for our time, but we always need to really be reassessing. Are we giving enough attention to both our ritualistic lives and our spiritual lives and our Bein Adam l'chaveiro, the way that we treat other people, and as a means, which can also be a means to really following God and being close to God. So I hope we can all do that at this time of year, and thank you so much for coming. Please, yeah.
I remember the Puberman from the Chalal of Hashalom, he asked me, it was like my entrance question.
Yeah.
I was very nervous, and he said, what came first? He asked me to read like one of the Rashis and Bereshit, I don't remember the exact lesson. But he says, which one came first, Korbanot or Tefillah? And I thought that Tefillah was in lieu of the Korbanos that were missing today. But
I think you're right also, but he wanted to say, I think you're right also, but what did he want to teach you?
So if you look in the pasuk and you look in the Rashi, it says that one of the first Korbanos was brought b'makom tefillah. So really tefillah preceded Korban. So we're always praying with the Chazana, name of the Shifra, and we should bring the Korbanos, but really it's the tefillah. That's really like the foundation, and then
I think the Rambam would like that idea.
I think that was brought up before, that the Korbanos was like a cultural thing. Also, the Yisrael wanted to connect to Hashem in the same way that other nations did. A little bit, I don't want to use the word be Eved, but really the Makom Tefillah, that was really like the initial
purpose and
right.
The object.
I just read last night, I did this nice book with the kids yesterday in Shabbos called Rav Elbaz, a Torah riddle, and he said, who was the first person to pray? So it wasn't Abraham Avinu, it was Adam Harishon. And said that the trees, Hashem he created the trees and the Asaph, but they didn't grow fully until Adam Harishon prayed. So in other words, we're like, that's like the whole idea of like being a partner with Hashem, kivyachol. And that Hashem is mit'ave l'tfilas and shel tzaddikim, and he waits for our prayers. It's just an interesting idea.
Thanks for sharing. Go ahead.
Skype was beautiful
Thank
share.
you.
But yet, even before Noach brought his korban to the table, Cain and Hevel brought korbanos, and yet they're pleasing to Hashem.
It did please Hashem?
I mean, there was one upmanship, but
Right. Right, and when Yirmiyahu's saying, I never commanded you, in the right circumstance, a korban could be a wonderful thing. And you said, Re'ach nicholach LaHashem, it could be a wonderful thing to Hashem. The Nevi'im downplay it, I think, because of the situation, because of what was going on at the time. I don't think we should be standing there in Yom Kippur either and saying, okay, we daven in place of korbano, but Hashem doesn't want our tefillah. He does, but he wants the full picture. Right?
I have a question. The Kuzari at the very end. I was kind of while you were reading it.
Yeah, we didn't read the very end where what he says about the Shabbat and Chagim.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's funny because every time I think about these Machronim and what they say about Kabbalah, both what I've learned and many more than what you shared, like it's just so striking that so much of it is about paying attention to Ben Adam Chavero and like sort of what's the value of Kabbalah or broadly, right? Ben Adam Makom if you're not also doing Ben Adam Chavero. And I think often about how we focus on that, whether it's in teaching or what rabbis tell us in Shul, but at the same time, sometimes it's more intuitive to perform Ben Adam Chavero mitzvot, because it's about kindness and goodness, and less so about like to focus with kavanah on rituals because it seem distant. Meaning you could say almost the opposite at times. If
For the 21st century, you're saying.
Right. I don't know. I don't know exactly the 21st century, but like sort of in my experience.
The first session is ending now. The second session is beginning in 10 minutes at 11:45. Thank you.
He's sort of taking the other approach, if I'm reading it correctly, that it's not just that you need these rational commandments to follow what's good for society, and then we can also accept the divine commandments as part of it, but that at the same time, you approach it from the other perspective, right? That
we can't
can you do justice and goodness if you're not, and also have the ritualistic part, like that there's. I don't know if
you need both, right? Yeah. It seems like the end there. I'm not exactly sure if it's written rhetorically. The question of can it be imagined?
Right.
So I don't know. I have to look into that more.
Right before that, there's an ulam right before the golden part, like however, right? Like almost like at the same time, can you imagine the reverse being true? Which I think is just, it doesn't contradict anything that you're saying. It just adds another element.
Because he's saying that we do need both more than
like
than
can
perhaps
you be happy just doing kindness and chesed if you and without having
the ritual. But I think your first point is also true. In some way, I don't know that we can relate as much to the Nevi'im, because like I brought that example of how the first quote that we had from Yeshayahu, like it rings so true to me that what the communities down south are doing for the flood victims, like wow, but we're in some ways we're so good at this today, and of course we could always be better, but it's so relatable. The opposite of what was going on is in fact relatable, and maybe it is a question of time period. And because if he's saying they're both important, like of course they're both, but we need to sort of check in and see what's missing in my own practice in our community, depending on different factors.
What do you teach? What grade do you teach?
It's my first year teaching here. I'm teaching 9th and 11th grade.
They just
It's from
elementary school.
Hello, I'm Suzanne Cohen. The topic that I want to discuss today is whether Hashem prefers the tshuva of a tzaddik or the tshuva of a rasha, and in particular how it relates to the case of Chizkiyahu and his son Menashe. So there's a few sources that I copied. It looks long. I hate giving out source sheets that are long, but there are so many psukim that are directly relevant to the story that I'm not going to quote, but that I thought that you might be interested in looking at. But I have to say, even with that, there are prakim that are still in Malachim that are so interesting that I'm just going to refer to, but that really, if you're interested further, it pays to just read them and just like hear the story of how it happens. Okay, well, let's start with Chizkiyahu to begin with. Chizkiyahu was born from a father who did not follow in Hashem's ways. So in a sense, we could say that he too is also a Baal Tshuva, because he came to Hashem basically on his own. His father, who was also a king, did Avodah Zarah, and the country was sinning. And so Chizkiyahu, when he came into his own right and he came into the kingship, he basically had to start from afresh. And he himself recognized that he wanted to follow Hashem. If we take a look in Malachim, so this is where the story of Chizkiyahu begins, in Malachim Perek Yud-Chet. We see in Pasuk Gimel, so first it introduces Chizkiyahu, and this Chizkiyahu begins his reign when he is the king in Malchut Yehuda, and there is still the country and the kingship of Malchut Yisrael alongside him. It is during his time as king of Malchut Yehuda that Malchut Yisrael is taken into Galut by Ashur. That we'll get to a little bit later. So it introduces him, and then it says in Pasuk Gimel, Vaya'as hayashar be'enei Hashem kechol asher asa David aviv. That he did what was right in the eyes of Hashem, like all that David his father had done. So first of all, we have to take note of the fact that it compares him to David HaMelech, and says that he did right in Hashem's eyes, but not only did he do right in Hashem's eyes, but he really did it, like followed Hashem well, like David had done. And then it starts to give a mini little description of what he did that was so monumental. Hu hesir et habamot, he removed all of the high places. The bamot were private mizbachot, private altars that people used in their own homes. Some of them were to Hashem, which was no longer allowed, even though they were to give sacrifices to Hashem. Once the Beit HaMikdash was built, nobody was allowed to bring karbanot on their own private backyard bamot. And so even though it was to Hashem, that was also something wrong. But there were also bamot that were for Avodah Zarah as well. And so he removed all of those bamot, v'shibar et hamatzevot, and he smashed monuments that were specifically for Avodah Zarah, v'karat et ha'asherah, and he cut down the asherah, that was a type of tree that they worshipped, v'kitat nechash hanachoshet, asher asa Moshe. When Bnei Yisrael were in the Midbar, at a certain point, towards the end of their travels, they angered Hashem, and he allowed snakes to attack them, and the snakes were venomous, and many people were dying. And so Hashem instructed Moshe to make this copper image of a snake, or copper replica of a snake, which he was supposed to hold high on, put on some sort of flagpole. And when Bnei Yisrael would look at it, and they would look at it up high in the sky, and they would recognize, their eyes would be directed towards Shemayim, and recognize that Hashem is really who they have to turn to, then they'd be saved from the venomous snakes, and they'd be cured, and they wouldn't die. So Moshe had made it. An interesting just trivia fact, the insignia for drugstores, etc., is a stick with a snake wrapped around it. That's from this Nechash HaNechoshet. But after a period of time, Bnei Yisrael began worshiping it. They saw it as something that in itself, they forgot that it was all from Hashem, and they saw it as something that in itself had its own powers. And so through the generations, Bnei Yisrael began worshiping that as an Avodah Zarah. So Chizkiyahu went ahead and he got rid of that Avodah Zarah. He destroyed it, even though Moshe had made it. And then Pasuk says in Pasuk Hey, V'Hashem Elokei Yisrael Batach, he trusted in Hashem, V'Acharav lo haya kamohu b'chol malchei Yehuda v'asher hayu lefanav. There was nobody like him among all of the kings of Yehuda, neither before him nor after him. Now this doesn't include David and Shlomo, because they were over all of Bnei Yisrael. This is specifically referring to the kings of Malchut Yehuda, which began right after Shlomo with his son Rechavam. So it's telling us here that Chizkiyahu, among all of the many kings of Yehuda, many of whom admittedly were bad and did not follow in Hashem's ways, but some of whom were really tzaddikim, there was none like Chizkiyahu. Vayidbak b'Hashem, he stuck to Hashem, lo sar me'acharav, vayishmor mitzvotav asher tzivah Hashem et Moshe. He really stuck to Hashem and followed in all of his mitzvot. That is the entire description that it gives us of Chizkiyahu's cleansing the kingdom and how he served Hashem. In a moment, I'll continue and we'll take a look at some of the things that go on politically during his time. But what's very interesting is that in Sefer Divrei Hayamim, it gives us a fuller picture of what Chizkiyahu did. And this I did not copy for you. So if you're interested, you could go take a look. But it really describes it in a lot more detail. And in great detail, it describes how he cleaned out the country. And his father, Achaz, had actually put Avodah Zarah, put an idol into the Beit HaMikdash on the roof. And it describes how he cleaned it and how he cleaned out the whole Beit HaMikdash and he purified the whole Beit HaMikdash. And he purified all of the Kohanim and the Levim. And he was not only satisfied with cleansing and influencing Malchut Yehuda, but he went ahead and he wanted to celebrate Chag HaPesach, which had not really been celebrated properly in many, many years, many, many generations. And he went ahead and he invited all of Malchut Yisrael to come as well. And that was his way of trying to unify the country. He actually inserted an extra month in the calendar, like a leap year, but later than he was supposed to have done it. There's a certain, supposed to do it by Adar. He ended up adding it in right at the beginning of Nisan to push Pesach off a month, because otherwise the people wouldn't have gotten there on time. And an additional thing that he did, which was really, let's say, questionable, was that we know that you're not allowed to bring a Karban Pesach if you are Tamei Lamet, if you've got impurities from touching or being around dead people. And there's a whole long purification process, which is a 7-day purification process. And only once you're purified are you allowed to bring and eat from the Karban Pesach. Those who, for whatever the reason, whether they're impure or whether they're too far away and can't get to the Beit HaMikdash in time for the Karban Pesach, were allowed to bring their Karban Pesach a month later. And it was a 1-day event. It wasn't the 7 days of Pesach. It was a 1-day event, really only limited to the Karban Pesach itself, and that was called Pesach Sheni. Chizkiyahu decided it was so important that he'd have all of Bnei Yisrael celebrating Pesach all together at once, and not just the Karban Pesach itself, but this 7-day holiday, which was not done on Pesach Sheni, that in addition to shifting the calendar so that Pesach itself would be a month later, like a Nisan Sheni, so to speak, he also decided that all of Bnei Yisrael could bring the Karban Pesach, even those who were not yet purified, because there were so many of them that were still tamei, that he decided we were going to do this even though they were impure. And Hashem accepted it, even though it was a questionable thing. Hashem accepted it and said, that's fine. In this case, it was allowed. And so Chizkiyahu, the description it gives there of this holiday that Bnei Yisrael made, which had nothing like this had been celebrated since the time of Shlomo, was really tremendous. And so we can really see the extent of his influence on the kingdom, how he rids it of Avodah Zarah, how he really inspires the people. Now, the people in Malchut Yisrael went back afterwards, but he really tried to inspire the people in Malchut Yehuda to worship Hashem. And that's a whole long description there. Now, during his reign, and he reigned for 29 years, so during his reign, the kingdom of Ashur grew in power, and Shalmaneser Melech Ashur came and attacked Malchut Yisrael, and he succeeded in destroying Malchut Yisrael and in exiling them. That was what happened. We're told that Chizkiyahu himself rebelled against Ashur at some point, and later on, Sancherib Melech Ashur is angry at Chizkiyahu, and he decides he's going to expand his power. He comes back to attack Malchut Yehuda. What's referred to also in the Navi, but not described in detail in the Psukim and Malachim, is that Chizkiyahu had gone ahead and had tried to form an alliance, or had actually formed an alliance with Mitzrayim, with Egypt, against Ashur. Now you have this superpower, and you have all of these other world powers, and they're all afraid that, once Israel is taken over, Egypt is next. And so it's to everyone's benefit, so to speak, politically, if they band together to form an alliance against the superpower. In general, though, the Nevi'im prefer that Bnei Yisrael don't seek these alliances with political these political alliances, because we're supposed to recognize that Hashem is the one who protects us, and it's not our political alliances that will help us, but it's really Hashem. Chizkiyahu goes ahead and he makes an alliance with Egypt. When Sancherib sends his general and a whole huge army to attack Yerushalayim, this is in the middle of Chizkiyahu's rule, years after Malchut Yisrael has been exiled. What happens is that they've come and they've conquered many cities leading up to Yerushalayim. And so, in essence, Yerushalayim is like this little island. It's, many cities and open towns around it have already been destroyed. And they come to Yerushalayim, and they essentially put a siege around Yerushalayim. This is around the time that, for those of you who have been to Chizkiyahu's water tunnel in Yerushalayim, this is approximately the time that he goes ahead and he seals the water that's outside, seals off the water that's coming to outside the city so that Ashur can't access it, and he diverts it to come inside the city so that they'll be able to have it during the siege. Sancherib's general comes to Chizkiyahu and says to him, "You're relying on Mitzrayim, but I have to tell you that it's like leaning on a splintered cane. If you lean on a cane that's like splintered, the pieces, it's just going to pierce your palm. You're leaning on this cane that's splintered. You think they're going to help you, but they're just going to go ahead and they're going to backstab you, and they're going to turn around and they're going to harm you in the end. You have to surrender to us, to Ashur. And also, you're relying on your God, but why do you think your God is going to help you? First of all, do you think we would have gotten this far if your God hadn't allowed us to come this far? We've conquered so many nations, and all of those gods we've conquered, your God isn't going to be able to stop us. And not just that, but your God is actually helping us, because he's allowing us to conquer you, because your king Chizkiyahu went ahead and destroyed all of his bamot. Now, as I mentioned before, even though some of those bamot were for Hashem, once the Beit HaMikdash had been built, they were no longer allowed to be offering on those bamot. So in essence, Chizkiyahu had done a good thing, which Ashur misinterpreted. The officers that heard this message, because they were sitting on the wall, and Rav Shakeh, who was the general of Ashur, was talking to them at the wall, and he was talking to them in Hebrew, which was the, I guess certainly the language of the Jews that they understood. And the officer said to him, "Please talk to us in Aramaic, because we don't want the masses to hear and to panic." And Rav Shakeh said, "Well, what do you think I'm here for? Why do you think I'm talking in Hebrew? I want them to hear. I want them to turn against Chizkiyahu and all surrender to me." When Chizkiyahu hears the news, he tears his clothing, he goes into mourning, and he sends a message to Yeshayahu, who is the Navi at the time, "Please daven to Hashem for me." And Chizkiyahu davens to Hashem, and Yeshayahu davens to Hashem. And Yeshayahu comes back with a message that basically says, "Don't worry, things are going to be okay. You will succeed, and Ashur will not be able to conquer you." If we take a look at source number 2, source number 2 starts by saying, "Bayamim hahem chala Chizkiyahu lamut." Chizkiyahu got sick, but mortally sick. He's going to die. Now, there's a little bit of debate among the Mefarshim when exactly this happened, in terms of when did he get sick versus what was going on in the country politically. Was he sick only after they had been saved from Ashur? Was he sick before they had been saved from Ashur? Did it happen at the same time? So we're going to go with the opinion that it happened at the same time. That is one of the opinions. And that while Yerushalayim itself is in this fear for its life, Chizkiyahu is also in danger for his life. So what happens at this point is that Vayavo Elav Yeshayahu ben Amos Hanavi, Yeshayahu comes to Chizkiyahu, Vayomer Elav, Ko Amar Hashem, Tzav leveitacha kimeit ata velo tichya. Yeshayahu comes to Chizkiyahu and he says, give your commands to your family and tell them all that you're going to die and you're not going to survive. If we take a look for a moment and turn to page 3 and take a look at the Gemara on page 3, the one that's in Brachos, Yud. So the discussion in the Gemara there is that there had been this let's say this power play between Chizkiyahu and Yeshayahu. Each of them felt that the other one should come to them. They had to somehow meet. Okay, there were things they needed to discuss, but each of them felt that they were more important and that the other one should come to them. And so in the Gemara, each of them brings a proof from a precedent from another king and a Navi, where in Yeshayahu's case, the Navi stayed put and the king came to him, and in Chizkiyahu's case, his proof was that the king stayed put and the Navi came to him. And so each of them had this precedent of why they were the more important one and the other one really should come to them. And they were really like in a deadlock. So the Gemara tells how Hashem made a sort of a compromise. It wasn't necessarily a compromise that either of them would have wanted. But the compromise was that he made Chizkiyahu mortally ill, and he was going to die. And so Yeshayahu came to deliver the news to him and to basically visit him before he died. So this was to neither of their advantage. Yeshayahu had to go to the king, but Chizkiyahu wasn't in circumstances that he would want because he was going to die. And the Gemara says, in the fourth line down, so from the underlined word of Bayamim, so Bayamim hahem chalach Chizkiyahu lamut, like we saw in the pasuk. In those days, Chizkiyahu got mortally ill and he was going to die. Ve'yavo elav Yeshayahu ben Amot hanavi. Yeshayahu came to him. Vayomer elav ko amar Hashem tzvakot. So says Hashem, Sav leveitcha ki meit ata velo tichya. Command your household that you are going to die and you will not live. The Gemara asks the interesting question: why does it have that the redundancy in the pasuk? You're going to die and you're not going to live. Obviously, if you're going to die, you're not going to live, and if you're going to live, you're not going to die. So why the redundancy? And the Gemara explains, Meit ata, at the end of the line, Meit ata be'olam hazeh, you're going to die in this world, v'lo tichya le'olam haba, and you will not live in the world to come. And Yeshayahu delivers this information, this news to Chizkiyahu. And so Chizkiyahu says to him, why? What did I do wrong? I mean, look what I did. I got rid of the Avodah Zarah, and I brought all of Bnei Yisrael to worship Hashem. I did so many good things in my life. What did I do wrong? And Yeshayahu says to him, what you did wrong was you did not involve yourself. You did not fulfill the mitzvah of Pru Uravu. At this point in his life, Chizkiyahu had been king for a while, and he did not yet have any children. So Chizkiyahu says to him, the reason that I didn't fulfill this mitzvah was because I saw with Ruach HaKodesh that my children or my child would be a Rasha. And so Yeshayahu's response to Chizkiyahu is, that may be true, but what goes on in Shamayim and Hashem's plans is none of your business. You have to do the mitzvah that you have, and your mitzvah is Pru Urvu, and Hashem will worry about the rest. That's not your business. You have to do what your mitzvah is. And so Chizkiyahu said to Yeshayahu, okay, I'll tell you what. Let me marry your daughter. Maybe my zechut and your zechut will combine, and that will be enough that our child will be, won't be a Rasha. And so Yeshayahu's response to him was, at the second to last line, the very end of the line, Amar le, Yeshayahu answered Chizkiyahu and said, Kvar nigzera alecha gzeira. It's too late. There's already been a gezerah in Shamayim. There's already been a decree that you're going to die, and it's too late to do anything about it. And Chizkiyahu responded to him, Amar le, Ben Amot, calls him by his last name, so to speak, his father's name. You son of Amot, it's his father. It's not a respectful way to speak to Yeshayahu. Kalei nevuatcha v'tzei. Finish your nevuah and get out of here. Kach mekublani mi beit avi abba. This is the teaching that I learned from my father's house and my grandfather's house. Afilu cherev chada munachat al tzavaro shel adam. I apologize, I got messed up when I cut and pasted. It's supposed to be shel adam. Al yimna atzmo min harachamim. Even if there is a sharp sword that is resting on one's neck, and it's imminent, death is imminent, you should never refrain from asking for Hashem's mercy. And this is one of the themes of Elul. It's never too late to ask Hashem for mercy. And so Chizkiyahu reprimands Yeshayahu and says, I know this. It's never too late. And indeed, Yeshayahu, the Navi, gives the story that Yeshayahu leaves, and Chizkiyahu then davens to Hashem. And if you take a look in Pasuk Gimel, beginning of his tefillah. Zachor na et asher hitalachti lefanecha be'emet u'v'leivav shalem v'hatov be'einecha asiti. He says, remember how I followed you, and I followed you, Hashem, in truth and with pure heartedness, and I did what you wanted me to. I did the good in your eyes. And he cries, and he really does tshuva. And Yeshayahu hasn't gotten further than the courtyard when Hashem calls to Yeshayahu and says, turn around and go back to Chizkiyahu and say to him in Pasuk Hey, I heard your tefillot, I've seen your tears, I'm going to cure you, and on 3 days from now you'll go back to the Beit HaMikdash. And then he says in Pasuk Vav, and I'm going to add 15 years onto your life. Umikaf melech Ashur al atzilcha ve'et ha'ir hazot. So this is one of the supports for the fact that this is happening at the same time. I'm going to save you from Ashur, and I'm going to save you Yerushalayim v'ganoti al ha'ir hazot lema'ani u'lema'an David avdi. I'm going to save Yerushalayim for my own sake and for the sake of David. So we see here a powerful example of tshuva that Chizkiyahu did. But what's interesting is even in the midst of this powerful example of tshuva, Chazal find little things wrong with it. If you take a look at Pasuk Gimel, when Chizkiyahu davens to Hashem, he says, Hashem, remember all of the good I've done. So Chazal say, somebody who davens to Hashem and asks him for something for their own sake, Hashem will answer him for the sake of their fathers. Somebody who davens to Hashem and asks Hashem for merit or for something in the sake of their fathers, and in the zechus of their fathers, Hashem will answer him in his own merit. And that gives an example of Moshe Rabbeinu that asked Hashem to save Bnei Yisrael in the merit of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and Hashem says, I'm going to do it for your sake, Moshe. But here, Chizkiyahu turns to Hashem and says, remember all of the good that I've done. And so when Hashem answers him in Pasuk Vav, Hashem says, I'm going to save you, Lema'ani u'lema'an David avdi, for my sake and for the sake of David. It's not your merit here that I'm using, it's for the sake of David HaMelech. So there's a little bit of a hint of rebuke in that phrase. The story continues, and as I skipped a number of psukim in the middle of this parak, and the story continues in Pasuk Yud Bet, that when Chizkiyahu got better, the king of Bavel sent a delegation to him. One thing that happened right beforehand is that Ashur does leave. Okay, Hashem says the story is told in greater detail in Divrei Hayamim, and also in Yeshayahu gives a little bit more information as well, and says that Sancheriv, and it's told in Yeshayahu in these psukim which I skipped, that Hashem says to Yeshayahu, Sancheriv is going to hear a rumor, he's going to leave, and then he's going to be killed. Indeed, Sancheriv hears a rumor that he's being attacked by another country. He goes and fights that battle. Overnight, Hashem does a major miracle, and he kills 185,000 Assyrian troops outside Yerushalayim. When the rest of them, however many they were, wake up and see all of the dead bodies, they run away. Yerushalayim is saved overnight. Sancheriv, who is off fighting, eventually returns to Nineveh, where his sons kill him, and another son takes over. So that's how Yerushalayim was spared. Bavel sends a delegation to visit Chizkiyahu after he is cured from his sickness. And it's probably likely that it wasn't just a get-well visit. It's probably also some sort of political delegation that might be coming to also try to form an alliance. And they visit Chizkiyahu. And Pasuk says that Chizkiyahu, Pasuk Gimel, shows them all of his treasure houses. Everything that's in his treasures and everything that is in all of the treasuries that are in the kingdom, he shows to Bavel. Yeshayahu comes back to Chizkiyahu and says, oh, who were those people who were just here? And Chizkiyahu tells them, and Yeshayahu says to them, what do they want and what did you show them? And Chizkiyahu said, I showed them everything I had. And Yeshayahu says to him in Pasuk Yud Zayin, Hinei yamim ba'im, because you did this, so behold, the day will come, v'nisa kol asher bebeitecha ve'asher atzru avotecha ad hayom hazeh bavela lo yivater davar amar Hashem. Because of what you did, everything that you have and that's in your treasure houses that your father stored up until this day will be taken to Bavel, and nothing is going to remain. Umibanecha asher yitz'u mimcha asher tolid yikachu. And from the children that you are going to have, they will bring back to Bavel, v'hayu sarisim v'hechal melech Bavel. And they will be officers in the palace of Bavel. And it's a tremendous punishment that hints to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. And Chizkiyahu's response to Yeshayahu is, Tov Dvar Hashem Asher Dibarta. Whatever Hashem says is good. Vayomer Halo im Shalom ve'emet yehiyeh b'yamai. And he continues and says, at least there will be peace and good during my days. So, Chazal asked the question, what happened? I mean, you have to ask the question in general, we've heard little criticisms of Chizkiyahu, but what did he do that was so bad that really led to this? I mean, they're foretelling the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, that all of the treasure houses and everything that Yerushalayim has is going to be taken to Bavel, that his sons are going to be taken. For what reason? What did he do so wrong that he deserved something like this? So we mentioned before, he tried to make this alliance with Egypt. He made an alliance with Egypt. Perhaps that's part of the reason. He didn't rely only on Hashem. Yeshayahu actually rebukes him for that. He shows the Babylonian delegation all of his treasures. And that's part of it as well. But if we take a look at Sefer Divrei Hayamim, it doesn't mention it here in Malachim, but Sefer Divrei Hayamim fills in a little bit of information. And it says in Divrei Hayamim that when Hashem saved Bnei Yisrael from Ashur, so many people came bringing offerings to Hashem. I didn't put this on your sheet. Many people came bringing offerings to Hashem and gifts for Chizkiyahu, and Vayinasei le'enei kol hagoyim me'achareichem. He became well known, he became important in the eyes of all of the nations. And then he got sick, and he davened to Hashem, and Hashem gave him a sign that he would get better. There was a miracle that was done for him. And then the pasuk says, "V'lo kigmul alav heshiv Chizkiyahu, ki gava libo." But Chizkiyahu did not repay Hashem as he should have, ki gava libo, because he became haughty. Vayihi alav ketzef ve'al Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. And Hashem became angry with him and Yehuda and Yerushalayim. And then because Chizkiyahu was sorry, so Hashem didn't bring it during his days. But essentially, Chizkiyahu was a wonderful king and the best that had been in Malchut Yehuda. But he had a flaw. Because of all the good he had done, because of all that he was able to accomplish, because of all that Hashem helped him and saved him, there was a bit of haughtiness in him. And he didn't attribute it enough to Hashem. And he became a little too full of his own glory. And that seems to be the reason for the punishment. If we take a look at the Gemara, number 4, source 4, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, in the second line, Bikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'asot Chizkiyahu Mashiach. Hashem wanted to make Chizkiyahu Hanavi Mashiach. He was going to make him Mashiach. And that the war with Sancherib would have been Milchemet Gog Umagog. But the Midat Hadin came to Hashem and said, Ribono Shel Olam, David Melech Yisrael, saying Shirot and Tishbachot to you. He composed most of Sefer Tehillim. And you didn't make him Mashiach. If we read the last part of the line, Chizkiyahu she'asita lo kol hanisim halalu, v'lo amar shira lefanecha, ta'asehu Mashiach. Chizkiyahu, who didn't say Shira, you're going to make him Mashiach? And Hashem said, you're right. And he didn't make Chizkiyahu Mashiach. And this seems to be his fatal flaw. This little bit of ga'ava, the fact that he showed off his treasure houses. Look what I have. Look how great I am. And the fact that he didn't ascribe things well enough to Hashem, and that's described in more detail in Divrei Hayamim than it was in Melachim. All of these pieces, the fact that he davens to Hashem and says, remember what I did for you, all of these little pieces all go together to paint a picture of a flaw that in a regular person might not be such a terrible thing, but in a person who did so much for Bnei Yisrael and was supposed to inspire them to follow Hashem, this little flaw in a person that could have been Mashiach, who's supposed to draw the whole world to recognize Hashem's greatness, you can't have that in a person who's supposed to be the representative of Hashem. He didn't ascribe enough to Hashem. And this was his flaw. Let's take a look now at Chizkiyahu's son. So Chizkiyahu, the nevuah that he got was that he would have a child, and so 3 years goes by, he does have a child, his child's name is Menashe, and Menashe, if we take a look at source number 5, the way he's depicted in Sefer Melachim, in Pasuk Bet, Vaya'as hara be'enei Hashem, he's a wicked king, this is after he becomes king, Avot ha'agoyim asher horish Hashem mipnei b'nei Yisrael. He acts in the way of all of the other nations that Hashem had already expelled from Eretz Israel, and all of the other Canaanite nations. Vayashav vayiven et habamot asher ibad Chizkiyahu aviv. He undoes all of the good that Chizkiyahu did. He reinstates the bamot. Vayakam mizbechot laBaal. He makes altars for the avodah zarah of Baal. Vaya'at asherah. His father had cut down the asherot in the bamot, and he goes ahead and he makes new ones. Asher asa achav melech Yisrael. Vayishtachu lechol tzva hashamayim vaya'avodotam. He serves all types of avodah zarah. And then he goes ahead and he takes one step that nobody has ever done before, and that is in Pasuk Chet. Vayiben mizbechot l'chol tzva hashamayim b'shtei chatzrot beit Hashem. He builds mizbechot in the Beit HaMikdash itself. Now I mentioned earlier that Achaz had put in avodah zarah into the Beit HaMikdash, but Achaz didn't dare put it into the Beit HaMikdash itself. He put it up on the roof. And Menashe goes ahead and puts it right into the Beit HaMikdash. Ve'ha'avir et beno ba'esh. He does one of the most abominable things that's ever possible to do. He worships an avodah zarah, which is called molech, where you pass your children through fire. Ve'onein v'nichesh ve'asa'o v'idonim. He consults and does all sorts of types of witchcraft that we're not allowed to do from the Torah. Hirba la'asot hara be'enei Hashem l'hach'is. He does all sorts of things that are bad in Hashem's eyes, lehach'is. Not because he had such a desire, such a pull to do it, but like Achaz had. Okay, the Mepharshim talk about the fact that Achaz, his grandfather, also did avodah zarah, also did terrible things, but it's because he had a pull towards it, a ta'ava towards it. Menashe, a lot of what he did was lehach'is, was to anger Hashem. And then it goes into a long discussion of what, a shorter discussion of what he did, but of what Hashem says that he's going to do because of Menashe. And it's because of Menashe that Hashem decrees that there's going to be a Churban Beit HaMikdash. Where he actually says it's going to happen, and it's not, now it's definite. And that's in Pasuk Yud Bet. L'chein kol amar Hashem Elokei Yisrael, hineni mevi ra'a al Yerushalayim b'Yehuda asher kol shom'a titz'al nashtei aznav. I'm going to bring such terrible things on Bnei Yisrael, on Yehuda and Yerushalayim, that anybody who hears it, his ears will ring. And it continues discussing that a little bit. And it says then in Pasuk Tet Zayin, after it tells about the avodah zarah, and after it tells about the punishment that Menashe is going to get, it says, V'dam naki shafach Menashe harbe ma'od. He also killed many, many innocent people. Ad asher milei et Yerushalayim peh lapeh, till like Yerushalayim was swimming in blood. The Gemara tells us, on source number 7, a little bit what some of this innocent blood was that he spilled. And the Gemara says there, the first few words, Menashe harag et Yeshayahu. Menashe killed Yeshayahu. Now, if we just remember for a moment, Yeshayahu is not only the Navi in his time, Yeshayahu is his grandfather. His father, Chizkiyahu, married Yeshayahu's daughter. So Yeshayahu is his grandfather, and he went ahead and killed him. And the Gemara tells how he made a court case. He didn't just kill him, he had a whole philosophical court case. And he says to Yeshayahu, the Torah says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Ki lo yir'ani ha'adam v'chai. Nobody can see God and live. And yet you, Yeshayahu, say, et Hashem Elokim, et Hashem yoshev al kisei ram v'nisa. I saw Hashem sitting on his throne. So Menashe says, Moshe says that's not possible. You are saying blasphemy. You deserve to die. And he brings a couple of other examples where Yeshayahu contradicts something that Moshe Rabbeinu says. Now, Chazal explain how Yeshayahu is able to say what he says, and how it wasn't necessarily a contradiction of what Moshe said. It's just that Yeshayahu didn't have as great clarity as Moshe Rabbeinu in Nevuah. He thought he saw Hashem, it wasn't really Hashem. Gemara explains it away. But Menashe uses that as an excuse to kill Yeshayahu. And Yeshayahu basically says to Menashe, I know that nothing I can say is going to make a difference to you. And Yeshayahu runs away from him. And he sees a tree. He steps into the tree to try to hide from Menashe. But depending on the Gemara, the Bavli doesn't say this, it's elsewhere in the Midrash, that Menashe sees, or his men see, Yeshayahu's tzitzis hanging out from the tree. He realizes Yeshayahu's in the tree, and he chops down the tree. And as the axe gets to his mouth, and Yeshayahu dies. And the Gemara says it's because Yeshayahu had said, "Ubetoch am tmei svatayim anochi yoshev." I dwell in the midst of a nation of impure lips. And so that was his, as if it was a punishment for saying that about Bnei Yisrael. So this is a terrible story about Menashe, how he could go ahead and kill his own grandfather, just the cruelty. I heard once from Rabbi Menachem Liebtag another way of understanding the Gemara, a non-literal way of understanding the Gemara. Yeshayahu, all he stood for in life was giving nivuot. He gave nivuot during the times of Uziyahu, Yotam, Achaz, and Chizkiyahu. And the essence of his nivuot were that Bnei Yisrael should change their ways. There was a lot of social injustice. They should improve themselves in mitzvot bein adam l'chavero primarily, and save themselves from an impending destruction, like we saw with Ashur. And he tries very hard to do that. And to a certain extent, he succeeds with Chizkiyahu in his time. And Menashe comes along and is so bad that Hashem says, that's it. The decree is going to happen. I'm going to destroy the Beit HaMikdash. And Menashe, in essence, kills Yeshayahu's, everything that Yeshayahu stood for. Everything that Yeshayahu tried to do, which was to make sure that Churban wouldn't happen, Menashe comes and destroys. And so that's another way of understanding this Gemara, that he basically destroyed Yeshayahu and Yeshayahu's purpose in life. And so Menashe in general is looked at as the worst king in Malchut Yehuda. However, if we take a look in Divrei Hayamim, Divrei Hayamim gives us information that is not found in Sefer Malachim. And it's different than when I showed you with Chizkiyahu. Because with Chizkiyahu, Divrei Hayamim fills in details that Sefer Malachim didn't give us. But Sefer Malachim gives us the abridged form. Here, Divrei Hayamim adds in information that Sefer Malachim doesn't have at all. If you take a look in source 6, source 6, Vaydaber Hashem el Menashe ve'el amo v'lo hikshivu. Hashem sent Nevi'im to Menashe, and Menashe didn't listen to the Nevi'im, and Bnei Yisrael didn't listen. Vayaveh Hashem aleihem et sarei hatzava asher lemelech Ashur, vayalkedu et Menashe bachochim, vayasruhu banechushtayim, vayolichuhu bavela. Ashur comes and they take Menashe in chains to Bavel. And this is perhaps that fulfillment of what Hashem said to Chizkiyahu, your child is going to be taken down to Bavel, and Menashe is taken to Bavel. And the Midrash says that in Bavel, they put Menashe in some sort of water heater, and they turn on the fire. And as the pot begins to get hotter and hotter, Menashe feels his body beginning to scald and to burn. And he starts davening to all the avodah zaras he can think of, and nothing helps him. And then finally he says, well, you know what? I might as well daven to God. If, I know that he's out there, I know he's the God of my father. If he helps me, then I saved myself. And if not, then I tried everything. And he davens to Hashem. And Hashem saves him. And we see in these two last psukim here in Divrei Hayamim, Ukehatzir lo chila et pnei Hashem elokav, vayikana me'od milifnei elokei avotav. When he was troubled, when he was in pain and suffering, that's when he did tshuva, and he davened to Hashem, and he humbled himself greatly before Hashem. Vayitpalel elav, he davened to Hashem, vaye'ater lo, vayishma tchinato, and Hashem heard his tefillot, v'yeshivehu Yerushalayim l'malchuto, v'yeda Menashe ki Hashem hu ha'elokim. Hashem brought Menashe back to Yerushalayim, and Menashe then, from this point on, and the story goes on in Divrei Hayamim, which I did not copy here, but it goes on how for the next 33 years, Menashe was a king for 55 years longer than any other king. For the next 33 years of his life, he cleaned up Yerushalayim from all of the avodah zarah. he himself went ahead and served Hashem truly, truly. And that's what he did for the rest of his life. And he did a tshuva. And yet, this information is not told to us in Sefer Malachim. And we don't know this from Malachim. And Menashe is not remembered so much for the tshuva that he did, but rather for the evil person that he was. And so the question is, why isn't this in Malachim? Why does Yirmiyahu, who wrote Sefer Malachim, almost try to gloss over this part of his life? Whereas Ezra, who wrote Divrei Hayamim, puts it in. So there are many different answers given. But one of the answers is that one of the purposes of Sefer Malachim that Yirmiyahu wrote Sefer Malachim is, which takes us from basically the very end of David HaMelech's life and the beginning of when Shlomo becomes the king and builds the Beit HaMikdash, and it ends with the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, is to essentially tell us that the story of how the Beit HaMikdash was built in all its glory and how it came to be destroyed. And so the purpose of Sefer Malachim is essentially to show us the religious issues and how Bnei Yisrael and their kings really came to their downfall. And so it's painted clearly in Sefer Malachim all of the bad things that Menashe did, because it was because of him that the Churban was sealed and definitely happened. And although Divrei Hayamim tells us of how Menashe did tshuva, he did it himself. He was not able to do like what Chizkiyahu did, where the people in the country were able to do tshuva. The people continued to worship Avodah Zarah during Menashe's time. And so when his son came to the throne, and his son was a Rasha, everything went downhill. And after that, there were not really... Yoshiyahu tried to do tshuva. He did a tremendous tshuva, but there was no ability to kind of stop the ball from rolling downhill. And so Menashe really set that ball in motion. Ezra, who compiled Sefer Divrei Hayamim, was coming back to Yerushalayim to build the second Beit HaMikdash. And they were looking at it from a perspective of Hashem has accepted our tshuva and is helping us rebuild. And so he's looking at it from a perspective of Hashem's mercy and Hashem's, what we can, the tshuva and how Hashem accepts tshuva. And so he puts in this piece about how Menashe did tshuva and Hashem heard his tefillot, because he's looking at it from a different perspective. But essentially, that's not what Menashe is remembered for. Menashe is remembered for the bad that he did, and not the good that he did. If we take a look at there's a Gemara that says that Rav Ashi, who wrote the Gemara, who compiled the Gemara, saw Menashe in a dream and said to him, why, you had all this stuff, your father was a tzaddik, and you did tshuva, why did you worship Avodah Zarah? And Menashe said to him, had you been there, you would have run after it yourself. There was such a pull in those days that you can't judge me. And Rav Ashi accepted what Menashe said, and he acknowledged it to his students the next day, and he spoke more respectfully of Menashe. And essentially the message that I think we can take from these two episodes is, like it says in source number 8, במקום שבעלי תשובה עומדים, אין צדיקים גמורים יכולים לעמוד. In a place where a Baal Tshuva is standing, where he has gotten to, tzadikim gemurim can't stand there. The effort that it takes to do tshuva when you're coming from a place that's not that way, when there's an idea that it's not where you are, it's how far you've come. If it's a real tshuva, then you can't judge that person. And so essentially, Chizkiyahu HaMelech was a Baal Tshuva. He came from nothing. He came from a father who did Avodah Zarah, and he did tremendous tshuva, and he accomplished a tremendous amount. Menashe himself was also a Baal Tshuva, but his tshuva wasn't the same as Chizkiyahu's tshuva. He didn't start doing it for the right reasons. He did it because he had nowhere else to turn. He was going to die. And so he had nothing else that could save him, and he tried everything else. And even his tshuva that he did, and he followed it and himself changed himself, he didn't get Bnei Yisrael to do it. And so, in essence, although Hashem values the tshuva of a Baal tshuva almost more than that of a tzaddik, certainly values the Baal tshuva himself and where he is and his accomplishment more than what a tzaddik and how far he has come, Menashe was not that ultimate Baal tshuva. And so therefore, even though he himself did tshuva And as Menashe demonstrated to Rav Ashi, and Rav Ashi said to his students, we can't judge him, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his Nevi'im are able to say about Menashe, he wasn't the Baal Tshuva that we should emulate. Chizkiyahu, Yoshiyahu, it says about Yoshiyahu that he was an even greater Baal Tshuva. That's the kind of Tshuva that we should emulate, not Menashe's. However, we ourselves can't judge Menashe because we are certainly even not on the level that Menashe was when he did Tshuva. So I wish us all that Hashem should hear our tefillot and our tshuva and should give us all a Gemar Chasim Tova.
Thank you.
Very